Hello, I'm Jim Brewer. Welcome to our presentation on OSHA record keeping and reporting requirements. So during this seminar, we will discuss both record keeping and reporting. For record keeping, we will discuss what records are required and who is required to keep them. When we get into reporting, there's a couple of different types of reporting. The most common type is our OSHA 300 series, the 300, the 301. We'll discuss who's required to do that and how often. And then we will also talk about required incident reporting, as well as annual reporting. So I think you'll find this informative if you're subject to these record keeping and reporting requirements. So the purpose of the rule from OSHA is to require employers to record and report work-related fatalities, injuries, and illnesses. There is no, connection between reporting something and a penalty. Yes, if you report something, you might get a fine or a penalty, but simply reporting an injury or accident does not guarantee that there will be any type of penalty or fine. And the OSHA injury and illness record keeping requirements are different from reporting to your workers' compensation company. They're independent processes. So we'll discuss that further. So record keeping is maintaining injury and illness records for recordable incidents. And then at the end of the year, we post the annual summary. But we keep the OSHA 300 log day to day throughout the year anytime a recordable incident occurs. For reporting, there are some incidents like fatalities, hospitalizations, amputations, loss of an eye that must be reported to OSHA. And then there is annual reporting for some companies. All companies with 250 or more employees, and in certain industries, that number is reduced to companies with 20 or more employees. So, regardless, though, of your company size, all employers are required to report the reportable incidents, which include fatalities, hospitalizations, amputations, or the loss of an eye. So, who's required to do record keeping? Most employers are subject to the OSHA injury and illness record keeping requirement, but there are some exemptions. Companies with no more than 10 employees anytime during the year are not required to keep the OSHA injury and illness records. Then there are some low-risk industries that are exempt as well from the requirement. So the Part 1904, which is the OSHA section on record keeping, Appendix A in Subpart B, has that list of exempt industries. So you can refer to that if you have any questions. So the 10 and under record keeping exemption is always valid regardless of the industry, unless that company has been specifically directed by OSHA to keep records. So here are some industry codes, and these are common codes 4 industries that I work with, and these industry codes are used to determine if you're exempt from record keeping or if you have to do the annual reporting if you have 20 or more employees. So these industries shown here, trade-related things, none of these categories are exempt for record keeping unless they have less than 10 employees throughout the year. Furthermore, all of these industries are required to do electronic reporting each year if they have 20 or more employees anytime during the year. So, record keeping simply means keeping a record of recordable incidents. Determining if something is recordable is a 4-step process. If it is recordable, then we must complete an OSHA 301 injury and illness incident report and also enter the information on the OSHA 300 log. So let's look at that 4-step process. So decision 1 is, did the employee experience an injury or illness? Question 2 is that injury or illness work-related? Number 3 is it a new case? And then, does it meet the general recording requirements? We're going to discuss each one of these steps in more detail. So step 1, did the employee experience an injury or illness? So an injury or illness is any abnormal condition or disorder. It includes things like cuts, fractures, sprains, and it also includes acute and chronic illnesses, respiratory disorders, poisonings, things like that. So, is it work-related? Well, if it happened at work, it's likely work-related. And it will be presumed to be work-related unless it can be shown otherwise if it happened at work. But some things show up at work, but the actual incident that caused it happened off-duty or before work, okay? So you have to look at the circumstances and make a reasonable decision, okay? And then, is it a new case? It's a new case if you had not previously recorded something for this individual, and it's also a new case if a previous injury or illness was completely resolved and this is a new occurrence of the same thing. It would again be recordable as a new case. And then, does it meet the general requirements for recordable incidents? And if it's a death, if it involves days away from work, restricted work activity, transfer to a different assignment, any medical treatment beyond first aid, loss of consciousness, or any other significant event diagnosed by a physician or healthcare provider, then it would be recordable. Okay, so first aid is not recordable. So what's first aid? Okay, it's minor things, non-prescription medication, a tetanus shot, cleaning of an injury, minor wound coverings like Band-Aids or butterfly bandages, putting an ice pack on your knee, temporary immobilization, eye patches, finger guards, using or drinking fluids to relieve heat stress, minor things. Using an eye wash solution to get something out of your eye, if that resolves the problem, those things are considered first aid, and they are not recordable incidents. Let's look at some other recordables. Needle stick or sharps injury if they contain another person's blood or infectious materials. Splash or exposure injuries are only recordable if they actually result in a bloodborne illness like HIV or hepatitis. Cases of medical removal. Medical removal is when somebody reaches a trigger threshold in some of the standards like silica or asbestos. Work-related hearing loss, that is recordable, and TB exposure that actually results in a TB infection. All of those things are recordable. And here are the specific OSHA references if you need more information on any of these items. There are exceptions to the recording rule. If an employee is present at work but as a member of the general public, for instance, maybe you have a store and the employee came to your store on their off-duty hours and tripped and fell. That's not a recordable injury, even though it happened at work. This person wasn't working at the time. Symptoms that appear at work but result from non-work incident or exposure are not recordable. Injury sustained during voluntary participation in wellness programs or recreational activities, cooking or preparing food or drink during a break time, not recordable. Personal tasks outside of work hours, not recordable. Common cold or flu, not recordable. Vehicle accidents on company property before or after work, not recordable. So there's a lot of exemptions to the recording. All of this is outlined in Part 1904 of the OSHA regs if you ever have any questions. Since I'm recording this in the height of the pandemic, let's talk for a moment about COVID-19 and is that recordable? So a confirmed case of COVID-19 is recordable if it's work-related. Determining whether it's work-related is difficult, and you have to consider, several factors. The nature of the job and the exposure to others. If you're in the medical field and this person is seeing patients, it's likely it's work-related. If there are multiple people in the workplace that are infected, then it's likely work-related. On the other hand, if there aren't other cases in the workplace, but somebody in the infected person's private life, in their home life, or somebody they hang out with off duty is infected, then it can probably be established that it is not work related. So you have to investigate it a little bit and make an informed decision and document why you made that decision in their file. So it could be recordable if it's presumed at work. If it's not presumed at work, then it's not recordable. So that takes us to the end of part 1, which is about determining if something was recordable. In part 2, we will look at what you actually need to do once you determine that something's recordable. So I hope you enjoyed it. Stick around for part 2. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.